technician class exam. So we're essentially going to review the answer to all 407 questions. It's, I guess, loosely based on Dan Romanchik's book, the No Nonsense Technician Class Study Guide. He has one for each of the classes. And the main thing that I liked about his is he restructures it differently than the ARRL manuals. And then he starts with sort of the basics about electronics and stuff before you get into operating procedures and rules and regulations, which seems to make a little more sense to me.
I would disagree.
Okay.
And the reason I would disagree is we know that the rules and regulations do not necessarily make sense. Okay, because they're legislative.
Right.
And that means it's a more difficult thing to learn.
True.
And if you get the hard things out of the way first, okay, it makes life easier the rest of the way.
Well, that's a viewpoint.
It's like when I was learning landing, the instructor said, we got a good crosswind today. I think this would be a good day to do landings. And we had your maximum crosswind. We did our crosswind landings. Risk landings are easy.
Huh.
So I don't know whether he wanted to play with the possible ground group or not, but that's what we did.
Sounds like as my instructor, you're flying along and he's got a switch somewhere and he turns the ignition off.
Nice.
And then watches you. I almost landed in the cornfield. And then he showed me how to hop the fence and start the engine. Anyway, it's sponsored by the Indian River Amateur Radio Club and the KSC Amateur Radio Club. That's the two closest to this area. There's also the Platinum Coast Club in Melbourne, which is, I guess, right now probably the biggest definitely in this county.
Yeah.
We'll have 5 approximately 3-hour sessions. Depends on, could be 2, could be 4. There's no cost for this. We tried out at with KSC Club to charge a $15 fee up front for taking the exam to sort of get some skin in the game, make people show up. It didn't seem to make any difference. So we're not doing, and the ARRL doesn't want you to charge unless it's for something like that, where it's not for the course. Now this worked last night.
Blinking this morning. That PowerPoint?
No, it's LibreOffice, but
Probably just an arrow down on your keyboard to do it. Your space bar. Either one, yeah. Libre.
I have to really do it the hard way. Okay, so I guess the question is, why do you want to get an amateur radio license? What can you do with it? There's sort of tons of things. I'm still learning about them. There's lots of contests going on almost all the time. There's what they call QRP. We have our QRP representative Byron here, which stands for low power, with typically 5 watts.
Yeah, 5 watts.
Some people do 100.
Well, that'd be low power, not QRP.
Okay.
QRP is 5 watts for digital modes like CW, RTTY, stuff like that. For sideband, it's 10 watts if it's phone.
Okay.
But yeah, generally 5 watts.
Okay.
Why would anyone do that?
Which?
QRP.
because
You can do 1,500 watts. Why bother with QRP?
it's a challenge.
Ooh, there you go. It's a challenge.
It may not interest some people. Some people may want to go 1,500 watts with stacked Yagis and
Yeah. I don't have to get contacts unless I do QRP.
okay. There's also what they call field days. There's one of those coming up in a couple weeks. I guess the Indian River Club is going to have it at the church.
Yeah.
Okay. The NASA Club, it looks like, and they haven't decided, is going to be out at Cars Park. Because there's a building with a nice covered porch and air conditioning and a restroom. There's connections to space station and other satellites that you can do. And you can do that as a technician. There's POTA, SOTA, LOTA, ILLW, NOTA, VOTA, and others. Stands for Parks on the Air, where people will go out and activate a park. So if you go to a national park that has a number, I've never actually done it, but I've contacted some people. You can activate it with that number and, get points, I guess, for POTA stuff. There's summits on the air where you go out to some tall hill. I don't know if that has to be registered or not as a summit.
I think they are registered because I don't think there's anything in Florida.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Mount Dora, maybe,
Yeah, I don't.
but that's like 500 feet or something.
Yeah.
And LOTA, which is Lighthouse on the Air. And there's also the International Lighthouse and Lightships Weekend, which the NASA Club participates in at the Cape Canaveral Lighthouse. There's
Islands on the Air.
Islands on the Air. I didn't list that one. I'm trying to remember what NOTA is. Oh, NASA on the Air, which is going on right now. And then there's VOTA, which is Volunteers on the Air, which is a year long you get points for contacting ARRL volunteer members. So in my case, you'd get 10 points because I'm an instructor and a examiner. So you get 5 points each. If you get somebody that's one of the directors or somewhere in management, you maybe get 100, 150 points. A lot of people just like to build equipment, get into building antennas, which is a whole nother ball of wax.
AU0R.
There's public service where there's emergency communications, and there's two organizations, ARES and RACES. ARES is the ARRL, Emergency Communications, using amateur radio. RACES is similar but connected with civil defense, FEMA. There's local repeaters that you can access as a technician, because most repeaters are in the 2 meter, 70 centimeter band on FM or digital voice. There's nets that you can participate in. There's probably one every night around here. And then there's the digital voice, which is newer stuff, D-Star, DMR, Fusion, which allows you to connect to a repeater that's connected to the internet, so you can get to a repeater basically anywhere in the world. So you can talk on handy-talkie to somebody in Japan.
Bob, is Mars
Yep.
still operating?
Mars.
I don't know anything about Mars, but I'm sure Viren does.
Mars, the military amateur radio service. We do have a local representative, Ron Jubowski, if I remember correctly. You do need radio that has been modified to operate outside of amateur bands in the Mars area. Most major retailers will do that work for you when you buy the radio, do the modification. If you're reasonably handy with electronics, it's usually pretty simple. You can just remove resistor, remove capacitor, something like that, and then that opens up the radio. And then with Mars, they will give you some cryptographic software that you get to use. So that is the only time as an amateur that you're allowed to legally do encryption. It's when you're doing Mars.
I didn't know that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the exam for the technician class. We call it Element 2. Element 1 was for novice, which has gone away. There will be 35 multiple choice questions, A, B, C, and D. You need to get 74% or 26 correct, or miss less than 9 or less. They get the questions out of a question pool, which is 407 questions. There's 10 sub-elements. In other words, 10 different areas like electronic principles, which is the first one we'll talk about today. And then practical electronics, where it's schematics and parts and stuff like that. So it's broken up into 10 of those sub-elements. Each of those sub-elements will have anywhere from 2 to 6 groups of questions, and you get one question out of each group. So there's 35 groups altogether. You get one question out of each one. So you need to be able to get around 85, 90% on each group in order to ensure that you pass with a fairly decent score, although it really doesn't matter as long as you pass. When you take the exam, the first thing you need to do is apply for an FRN number. I'm trying to remember what it stands for besides Federal Resource or something number. You go to the FCC site and just fill out the form. There's no charge for it. And you need to do that for most of the licenses. If you're interested in GMRS or the FRS, Family Radio, those also require an FRN number. You will need your ID, like a driver's license, for the test. That's one of the things the examiners will check to make sure that your ID correlates to what you fill out on the 605 form. You need to bring 2 pencils. You can bring a calculator. You have to show that the memory is cleared. The TI 30 Roman numeral 2S or whatever, sort of the recommended one. They're about $14 at Walmart. For the technician, it's unlikely that you'll need the calculator unless you just can't multiply 2 times 10. You can't bring any notes. If you need to write stuff down, do calculations, you have to do it on the back of the answer sheet. Most important is read the question carefully, because sometimes the way they're worded, they will confuse you. And also read all 4 answers before you pick one, because you may see answer A that looks like it's right, but it may actually be answer D, which is all of the above. So you can get in trouble by not reading all 4 of them. And I've seen a lot of people that tend to go back when they're done and keep going through them again and changing answers. Not a good idea. And sometimes all of these choices are correct is the correct answer. That's why you need to look at them all.
We used to say RTFQ, read the effing question.
Yeah.
It's easy to skip over one word.
And the best thing to do is take practice exams. This is a list of a lot of sites where they offer them. They're all free. Even the one on the ARRL site. The hamstudy.org, most people think is the best one out there because when you miss questions, it tends to ask you questions about that topic. It puts more of them in the practice exam. Any questions on those?
Didn't one of those organizations shut down?
I am hearing that the hamstudy.org, the guy that does it is retiring.
Yeah.
So it's not clear if somebody else is going to pick it up or what. But the others work.
Yeah.
And you can download the question pool. In fact, if anybody wants it, I can email them a copy and just go through the questions yourself and practice. I did that for my extra and just had my wife ask me the questions out of the question pool. Okay. Now, I don't know why that's there. It seems to be in the way of things.
Bill Gates.
Navigating with your finger is a problem.